Thank you for joining the Influencer Fast Pass video interviews with experts. I have Alina with me right now. She is the founder and owner of Alina J, an influencer marketing agency. She loves connecting influencers to their dream brands and building lasting relationships. Alina has a bachelor's in communications and a master's in business and marketing. She has 3 cute kids and a wonderful husband. And fun fact, Alina was also my manager, did an incredible job, which is why I had to have her on today and wanted to share all the knowledge that I've learned with you. So welcome, Alina. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Let's get started. Can you briefly explain what a talent manager for influencers does and why their role is essential in our industry?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, in terms of like, you could break down like all the different tasks that an influencer manager does for sure. But kind of the way that I see it is that they are your teammate and they're your advocate. So they're your teammate in the sense that influencer marketing can kind of be a little bit lonely.
Yes, it
You
is.
know, yeah, like
Yeah, it is.
you're the
I mean, like,
creative
look
director.
around. I have no one here.
No, like you're the creative director, you're the person who's shooting the content, you're also the finance person, you're also the legal team, like you're wearing all of these hats. And sometimes, it can be easy to ask questions like, am I doing this right? Am I charging enough? Am I, advocating for myself? Was that too mean? Am I being emotional about this thing? All of those things. And I feel like a manager is essentially your teammate, where they're the person that you
Yeah.
call when you're like, what
You
do
have
you
no
think?
one to like bounce ideas off of
Yeah.
otherwise. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Where you bounce ideas off of, you kind of get input from. And then when it comes to being like an advocate, I feel like, your manager is the one who like sends out your rates. They say like, this is what she's worth. This is,
Yeah.
pay her what she's worth kind of
Yes.
thing. And then,
And we
uh,
love you for that.
yeah, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be your advocate. We're supposed to be the person that, you know, even sometimes is, and I don't want to say like bad cop, good cop, but your manager can be the one who's like, hey,
Yeah.
you can't treat my client that way, and you can still be the nice
Right. Because
influencer.
influencers can get steamrolled, and you don't want to burn bridges or be the bad
Mhm.
guy, because when you're working with these major brands, like, they're so huge compared to you that
Right.
it can be a little bit intimidating, almost like a teacher or a doctor, where you don't want to stand up and advocate for yourself. So it is important to have like an agency, a manager behind you that kind of makes you feel a little bit bigger too, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Like something to stand on. You're like, I have a voice. you
Yes,
know?
yes, which is so important. What specific services do talent managers provide to influencers? What all do managers
Yeah.
do?
So obviously, like I can't speak to all managers.
Right.
I don't know what everybody does, but essentially, kind of in my mind, I break it down into a few different categories. I do brand outreach, so pitching clients, pitching brands for my clients.
Yeah, and not all managers do that.
Yeah, so
There's
that's
a
a
lot of
big.
talent managers that don't actually pitch.
It's yeah, I spend a lot of time pitching. So,
Yeah.
yes. So pitching, and then also like the negotiating, I talked a little bit earlier about being an advocate for
Right.
you. But then also a lot of like the organizational stuff, looking at contracts, putting things on the calendar, so that like, when is this thing due? I send like weekly check-ins to my clients so that
Mhm.
they can kind of keep track of like what's happening, brands we're talking to, upcoming partnerships, things that are going on.
And are you the one that reviews the contracts and signs them, or is that something that influencers are in charge of?
So it depends. It depends on the client. It depends on, how comfortable they are with me signing the contract for them. And that's kind of like and I don't know how all agencies do it, but that's kind of like a person by person basis. I do look at all the contracts that come in, and usually kind of what I do is I'll look at the contract and, kind of look for things like
You're like
exclusivity.
step one
Yeah, I'll like kind of just
before
like
you
do
send it
like
off.
a basic look through of it. And then usually what I'll do, because I feel like two eyes are better than one, I'll send it to my client and be like, is there anything else that you see in this? Like, I see this, this, and this. Do you see anything else in it? And
Yeah.
is there anything that we need to change? And then I'll, shoot it back to the brand. So
Nice. So you're closing deals for influencers, you are pitching and then keeping them organized,
yes.
basically through the entire process. Because as an influencer, if others that are listening don't know, there is the outreach, and then you get them on the hook, you land the deal, and then there's the campaign brief and the content creation and the approvals and the
Yes.
negotiation, and then there's payment. So do you handle the payment as well?
Yes. So I do a lot of, so I'll do like the invoicing, and then I will
That's
send.
like its own thing. Like that
Oh
is a
my
whole
gosh.
other monster.
It is, it's a whole other thing for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, invoicing and then following up on late payments, because we all know that that is,
You don't say. I've never heard of that.
yeah. No, it is. It's
Yes, I've always been an advocate for influencers to add a late fee to all of your invoices.
for sure. I think that that's something, if we can put that in the contract up front, like it's the best way to go,
Yeah.
because sometimes, like, you talked about earlier, some of these brands, I'd say 9 times out of 10 brands are great and wonderful to work with, and
Yeah,
everybody wants the same
absolutely.
things. But you do occasionally get into situations where these brands are not being respectful of you, and they're not being respectful of your time, and it's like
They
it was
just might not be
due.
as organized.
Yeah, and sometimes they don't see that as an issue. They don't
Yeah,
see it's like, oh, this person needs to be paid. They're like, we
right.
will pay you. And it's like, yes, but it was due yesterday. So please pay.
Actually, it was due 90 days ago.
Actually, it was due.
Actually, it was due when I did the work 60 days ago.
Oh my gosh. I have one client where it's like we're still fighting them on getting paid from like 2022.
I
Like,
really hope you're sending daily late fees at this point because this
I
is
know it's
crazy.
ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Those
Anyway,
things would add up, man.
I know for sure.
So do talent managers also assist influencers in like developing their brand and creating a strong online presence? Do you have any input on that side of things?
Yeah. So something that I feel that I do kind of in relation to that is I take a lot of things off the influencer's plate so that then they can have more brain space for like creativity, engagement, and all of those things. But what I have noticed more and more is that because when I first started this, it's very new for me. I'd have, my clients ask me questions and I'd be like, I feel like I don't know what I'm talking about, but
Yeah,
here's my, 2 cents. But as I've been doing this more and more, I feel like I've developed kind of an eye for, what are brands looking for? What kinds of things are going to get them interested in working with you? And so I've started, this is a fairly new thing, but I've started implementing what I call a strategizing call, where I hop on the phone with each of my clients at least once a quarter, some of them more than that.
Mhm.
But where we sit down and we talk about like, what are our goals and how are we going to get to these goals? And not just like financial goals, but also like
Right.
growth and landing dream partnerships with brands that we really want to build relationships, building long lasting relationships, and kind of
Right.
that idea that everything that you're doing um, should be in line with one of these big goals,
Yeah.
because oftentimes I feel like it can be easy to just be like, oh, I'm just posting content. But
Right.
when you're posting content, it should be in conjunction with something that you're trying to accomplish. You're
Right.
building your own brand. And so like I will send like creative concepts where it's like, well, for the month of October, your niche is family and lifestyle. Here's like 10, 15 ideas of things that you could create content about that would attract these specific brands because they're looking for stuff like that.
And I just want to make a note of this for everyone that's listening right now is that is above and beyond. Typically, your manager won't do that. So I'd say that is something that makes Alina very different and special because that is important just to keep you on track with, your overall goals for your brand. So that's really cool. Do you have any examples of successful collaborations or partnerships that you facilitated for your influencer clients and like how did that benefit both the influencer and the brands involved?
I feel like the most successful partnerships, at least from my perspective, are the partnerships where, in my mind, it's like you've got brands that are looking for the influencers that they want to work with, and then you've got influencers who are looking for the brands that they want to work with. And sometimes, team up and it works, it's okay, but it's not really like the perfect fit. And then you'll never work with that person ever again
Right.
because they walk away from it being like, whatever. But my favorite partnerships are the ones where it's like you find that perfect fit and it just clicks and it's like this amazing, coming together, like almost like a marriage of like
Yeah.
the audience loves the brand, they love the product, the brand sees that engagement, they see that excitement, and they continue working with you. So
Yeah.
not only is it good for like long-term deals, which makes the influencer happy because then they've
Yes.
got like a guaranteed stream of income, but it
Mhm.
also is good for the brand because then they've got a partner that they trust and that they can rely on and that they feel confident in.
Yeah.
And even when they don't have a budget, maybe you don't work together for a few months, but then they do have a budget and you're the person that they think of. And for
Yeah.
me, that relationship, that trust, that mutual, like how it's mutually beneficial,
Mhm.
that relationship is probably, in my mind, what the most successful collaborations look like, because I feel like this whole industry is built on relationships. You can be amazing at what you do, you can create amazing content, but if you are not fun to work with or
Yeah.
not a relationship builder, I've had brands walk away from partnerships with some clients and be like, never again.
Yeah.
And it's like, because those relationships are so important. So in my mind, the most successful partnerships are really built on those relationships.
You've heard about that with celebrities, like which actresses and actors get blacklisted because they were amazing in their, in their field, but they were awful to work with.
Right, exactly. And so I
Yeah.
think that that can even be a hard thing when you're like trying to advocate for yourself, where you're like, I don't want to be blacklisted because I don't want to be
Right.
difficult, but I
Right.
also advocate. So it's a hard thing to kind of figure out, and it's a hard balance to find.
Just why managers are very helpful in that
Yes.
in that aspect. I agree with you with that, long-term relationships equal, long-term deals and staying top of mind. Those are absolutely baller benefits when it comes to building relationships with brands that ultimately I do think it's a win-win and they equal happy clients, happy followers, and additional income, which
Yeah.
everyone loves, right?
Who doesn't love that?
I know. Those are the best, when you have income coming in every single month and everyone's happy. So that's definitely a successful collaboration in my eyes also. How do talent managers help influencers negotiate and secure brand deals or sponsorships? Are there any strategies that you employ to ensure the influencers' best interests are represented?
To answer the part about making sure that influencers' like best interests are taken care of, I think first of all, first step is understanding what the influencers' interests are. Like who are you working with? What are their goals? What are they trying to accomplish? I think at the beginning of doing this job, I saw it as like, oh, the brand is willing to pay. They'll pay you. I get paid.
Yeah.
Great. Like everyone's happy. But I've learned since then that there are so many other things that factor into keeping an influencer's like best interest in mind when you're securing these deals, because brands need to be respectful of your time, they need to be respectful of your energy, they need to be just respectful of the influencer in general. And like I said, 9 times out of 10 it's great, but occasionally it isn't. In terms of like what my role as a manager in securing these brand deals and advocating for my client, first of all, there's the concept of sending out their rates and then negotiating their rates. The method that I use is we've got the influencers' rates, but then I know about how much they're willing to come down, like what makes sense for them to accept and what doesn't make sense for them to accept.
Mhm.
And so I can kind of confidently work in that field of negotiating by knowing kind of what their wiggle room is.
Yeah.
Also understanding in working with brands what their wiggle room is too, hopping on phone calls with them and being like, let's just have a real chat here. Like, let's just,
Right.
just be direct. What are you working with? Can I get you what you need with that budget? So
Right.
kind of being
And
that
they're
lead.
more likely to talk to you over the phone versus putting it in writing.
Oh my gosh, yes. I'd say one of my top recommendations is, if you can hop on the phone, hop on the phone, like every
Absolutely.
single time. And a lot of people will be like, well, maybe it won't be worth my time because maybe it won't lead to anything. And I think that, well, I have a lot of thoughts about that. But one of the things is, first of all, you never know till you try. And
Right.
second of all, even if it doesn't lead to anything, you have, first of all, practiced relationship building, which is key. It's crucial in
Right.
this industry. And second of all, you never know where that person's going to go and what they're going to remember about you. And they might come back with a different agency and have, a $75,000 deal for you. So,
Exactly. Most people are
always,
very transient in this industry. Like they are
yes,
constantly moving. And you'll get an
yes.
email from somebody that you worked with at brand A and now they're at brand B. So that is,
Mhm.
very likely to happen. And we also have a get on a call guide inside Influencer Fast Fast if you want to learn more about hopping on a call. If you don't have someone like Alina in your corner and you need to advocate for yourself, grab that. In today's competitive landscape, what qualities or skills should influencers look for when choosing a talent manager? Like, how important is it for the manager to have experience and understanding in the influencer's niche or industry?
I really like that you bring up the concept of understanding specifically their niche and their, what field they're working in, because I think that different talent managers specialize in different talent. Like I can say specifically for myself, I don't work with any male influencers, not because I wouldn't, but I haven't. And so
Yeah,
I'm not as familiar with
it's
male
just not
brands.
in your Rolodex.
It's not what I've been doing. And again,
Right,
like I'm always open to learning and growing and all the things. So I'm not saying that I never will or anything like
right,
that. In terms of what kind of talent and what kind of clients I attract as a manager, they
right,
kind of all fall in similar niches because they look at what my client roster is and like, oh, it feels like a good fit. And so I think it's important to be mindful of when you're selecting your manager to look at who they also manage and like, are they going to be securing deals and working with brands that would be a good fit for me? Because if you're a food blogger and you go and you are in an agency that handles a lot of like motorcycle campaigns or
right.
something like that, it's like it might not be the best fit. I also think in terms of finding a good manager, I think it's important to look around and to think about things that are important to you and things that you value, because each agency is going to offer different
Yeah,
pros and cons to what they have, and that doesn't mean that one is better than the other, but one might be a better fit for you. One of the benefits of like larger agencies is that they might have some established relationships with brands, and that's really great. But one of the negative things about bigger agencies is that you might get lost in the shuffle. One of the benefits of a smaller agency is that maybe it's a more personalized experience. But again, maybe one of the downsides of a smaller agency is that they might not have these already pre-established relationships. And so in terms of getting you deals, you might need to be the thing that attracts the brand instead of the agency, if that
right.
makes sense.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I do have a couple of follow-up questions. One thing that you mentioned was when influencers are looking for managers, they all have like a similar niche, I guess. Like say you're working with a brand and they ask you for your roster, but everyone does the same thing. Is that a pro or a con? Like how do you look at that?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting concept because it's like you've got to have some diversification, but
Right,
not too much diversification.
right.
So certain things kind of feel like a better fit, at least in my mind, because this is what I've been doing. It's like
Yeah,
I do a lot of mom influencers, but that also lends itself really well to food influencers because moms are making food. Food influencers are often moms.
yeah,
But if you've got like a mom influencer who sometimes does food versus like a food influencer who sometimes does mom, then if you've got
yeah,
like a food brand, they're going to lean towards this. But if you've got a mom brand, they're going to lean towards this. You know what I mean? So there's
yeah.
kind of like at least the way that I see it, there's certain categories that can kind of go together. So you don't want everyone to be exactly the same on the client roster. That's a really good point.
Right.
But you kind of want things that seem to make sense. I mean, maybe a good way of looking at it is if you have ideal brands that you want to work with, you probably want to work with an agency that represents influencers who have worked or are working with those brands,
Right.
because then you can kind of get into the right
Yeah.
niche.
In the circle.
Mhm.
And do you find that the brands that are hiring influencers or that you're talking to, are they hiring the influencers on a one-off basis? Or are they hiring like 3 out of 5 on your roster?
So it depends on, again, it depends on the agency, it depends on the brand. Oftentimes they'll look at the roster, and one of my favorite things that happened recently is they're like, we have this much budget, this is what we're looking for. We're looking for mom influencers. What can you suggest for us? And I was like, I can put together like 5 different combinations, and tell you what their rates would be and what it looks like. And then she emailed back and she goes, we'll go with option 2. And I was like, that was the easiest conversation I've ever had
Yeah,
in
that's
my
so
life.
awesome.
I know. That is the way to do it. I'm like, tell me what your budget is, tell me how many
Mhm.
people you want to work with, tell me what you're
Yeah.
looking for, and I will just give you
Because it
give you
makes
the
their job easier too. They don't have to go outsource one by one.
right, exactly. And another thing from like the brand's perspective is oftentimes they're negotiating with 10 different people at the
Yeah.
same time. They've got a set budget and they're like, well, we could work with her if she'd come down a little bit, and we could work with her if she'd come down a little bit. But these influencers don't know that because they're not involved in the conversation. And
Right.
then, a couple weeks later, they're like, why didn't you work with me? And they might have been able to work together if they would have just dropped their rate like $500 so that it could fit within the budget.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, that's where a manager is useful because you can
Yes.
hop on the phone and be like, let's have a real conversation
Where
here.
you're at. Yeah.
Yeah, this is your cap. Okay, I can make that work and I can make that happen.
Right. And it's not so much about negotiating being sly. It's like literally this is the budget they're given because a lot of these people are like media planners that are in their 20s and early 30s. They're
Mhm.
not CEO or marketing director.
Oh,
They're having to plan it out and take it back for approval.
right, exactly. And I think that that's an area that influencers can sometimes they just don't see the behind the scenes, and so they can
Yeah.
feel like, "Why didn't you choose me? You know, I'm a perfect fit because of X, Y, and Z." And this like
Yeah.
20-something-year-old person is like, "Guy, I had like
Right.
I only had this much money and I couldn't do anything about it."
Right. I'm
Or
always like,
they're
please let me in the room. Just let me in the room to go sell myself, you know? But
exactly,
there's so
yeah.
many people in between you and the decision maker.
Right, exactly. And oftentimes too, like the agency or the brand will come back and they'll be like, "Sorry, we can't make it work." And you're like, "Well, why not?" And
Yeah.
they're not the one who decided.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting kind of process. And I think that the behind the scenes, what I've seen as a manager, being able to go back to my clients and be like, "Look, this is what happened." It's beneficial because I also feel like as a manager, agencies and brands are a lot more direct and
Yeah.
upfront with me because it can feel offensive to say to somebody like, "Well, your rates were too high." And I've had influencers who get mad when a brand
Oh,
says
really?
that and will, kind of go off on them and be like, "How dare you? Like, you
Gosh,
don't know,"
it's so bad.
and you're like, "No, no, 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 don't do that."
Please don't.
But it's easier to tell a manager, it's like, "Hey, look, we'd love to work with her, but we can't swing that extra
Yeah.
$2,000. We just can't."
And
You
sometimes
know?
they have their own software where they're looking at your engagement rate and the ROI from their end on different software. And that's just what they have put together. And that brings me to another question, too. Obviously, UGC deals are taking off and they're more and more requested by brands. And that comes along with usage rights and ad campaigns and all of that. So, are
Mhm.
those UGC deals something that you manage and pitch for now?
Yeah, so UGC is a very interesting thing because it is so new. And one of the things that I find very, very interesting about it is that because it's like usage of your photos or your
Right.
videos or whatever it is, some influencers want to charge an arm and a leg because they're like, you get this for forever, you
Yeah.
know, $10,000 or whatever. And then some
Yeah.
people are like, oh, I don't have to post it on my feed, so
Right.
$200.
200 bucks.
And so the rates are just all over the place. Like
Uh-huh.
it's insane. I kind of feel like it's a little bit unhinged because nobody really knows what should be charged and nobody really knows what brand. Like I've had brands come back and be like, "Yeah, we'll pay $7,000 for that." And brands come back and be like, "Oh, we're paying like $50."
Right.
So where are you getting that number? To answer it, yes, I do pitch and also manage the user generated content deals, but because it's such a new industry, it's been a very interesting experience. So
Right.
I'm excited. I feel like every single time something new comes out, nobody really knows.
Which is always Threads is next. I don't know if you're gonna pitch for
Yeah,
Threads
no,
soon.
I
Get
know
ready.
Threads is next, but every single time something comes out, it's always like nobody knows how to price it. And some
Yeah.
people price way high and some people price way low. And I think it gives everybody a little bit of whiplash because it's like, who's
Who's
doing,
right?
10 videos for $200? That's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, and the brands will ask for that. For the UGC creators, do you work with any UGC specific, or would you work with any UGC specific creators, or do they need to have a following too, in your opinion, to have a manager?
That's a really great question. Like I said, because of how new the industry is, I'm curious to see kind of how it will unfold because one of the benefits of having a platform is that, things change all the time.
Yeah,
And so in terms of how much you're able to make what your revenue looks like, UGC might be big right now, but then,
true.
a couple years down the road, you don't have that platform to fall back on, you don't have that following, and so now what is the and I could be totally off base, maybe UGC will totally take off, and I'm just saying, like, it's just hard to know, it's hard to know
Right.
kind of where things are going to go. And so I guess my kind of thought process on it is that it's always a good idea to have multiple plans. You can't kind of put all of your eggs in one basket. You've got to be thinking ahead and thinking about, so what are we going to do if this
Yeah.
happens, or what are we going to do if this happens? I don't manage any just user generated content clients right now. A lot of my clients I get from like referrals, but I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'd be curious to see what that looks like though.
Right. When would you say influencers are ready for a manager?
I think this is an interesting question because, and probably maybe more an appropriate question for you because
Right.
I've never been an influencer. So I don't know what it's like to juggle all of those things by myself. I've had some influencers that never have had a manager and then come to me and they're like,
Yeah.
oh my goodness, this is so much better now. I don't have to do
Right.
all of this by myself. And so I'd say a definite sign that you're ready for a manager is that you're juggling too many things and you can't do it all and you need help.
I would agree. I think when you're overwhelmed and you have too many inbound brand deals, that you would need to outsource it to get help answering all the emails. Like, you can't sit at your computer all day and answer emails and create content and
No,
engage with your followers and go be a mom, live your life, and have the freedom. So essentially you need to look at your income. And I would say, you can tell me what your target is per influencer. I think that's a great question. I don't even have in my list, but once you're making probably six figures, 100K, and you want to outsource, you can look at outsourcing to a manager, because you're going to be paying them 15, 20%. So
right.
if you can afford to hop off or chop off, $20,000 to a manager, and it would save you 3 hours a day or more and land you potentially 50K or more, because
Right.
that's the benefit. There's so many benefits of management, but obviously additional income is one of them, because you can
Yes.
actually pitch more. That's when I would look at trying to find a manager to help you. What is your, if you're looking in terms of income, do you have a set that you're like, okay, if this influencer makes, like, what have they made in the past, and is that enough money for me to take them on? Is that something you look at?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Because I think that looking purely at what an influencer has made in the past, it's a good indicator. It's a good thing to look at. But I also think some of my favorite people to work with are people that don't know what their potential is, where I can see,
Yeah.
like I can see what they can do, because I can see like their content is great, their engagement is great. They
Right.
just aren't optimizing their outreach, or they're not optimizing their rates. Like they don't know what
Yeah.
they charging, so they're doing all this work and not making
Mm-hmm.
what they should be making. And so I would say, like,
That's
yes,
a really good point.
yeah, yes, what you've made up to this point is something I look at for
But
sure
it's
when I'm,
not black and white.
but it's not black and white. And like I said, some of my favorite clients are the ones that I'm like, I see what you can do, and maybe you don't see it yet, and let's do this, because it gives them an opportunity to kind of realize what their
Yeah.
potential is, and what they have already that they don't know about.
Yeah.
And so it's that those are my favorite. I mean, I'm always excited if someone comes to me and they're like, I'm making $5 million. I mean, I haven't
Right.
had that, but I'm like, oh, I'll
Thank
take a cut of
you.
that. Thank
Yes.
you. But yeah, I think it's a bigger picture to
Yeah,
look at.
absolutely. I actually, being in charge of Influencer FastPass and helping creators find their worth, ask for their worth with brands, I've actually run into very similar things. The highest deal someone had made was $800, and that's because the brand reached out to them. But most of the time, they were too busy to answer the emails. They were too busy to even
Right.
follow up. And so I helped them. And their first month, they landed $34,000 in brand deals, and that was only three. So as you can imagine, their rate was a lot higher than what they had been offered. And the same thing happened. I was like, you have so much potential. You could crush it in this, you
You
know?
could just absolutely kill it. And
Yes.
it's so fun, and it's so fun to see, because these amazing clients, they have all this potential for like so much financial freedom. Um,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
feel like that's something that you talk about a lot,
Yeah.
both on your Instagram page, but also like I feel like in this, the reason that you're doing this is like, let
Yes.
me help you get,
Exactly.
amazing financial freedom. And I think that that's such a gift, where it's like we don't have to be stressed about these things, because
Right.
we're able to monetize and be smart. You don't have to necessarily, I mean, you should work harder. Everyone should work harder,
Yeah.
but
Work smarter
work smarter and harder,
and
but work
harder. Yes.
smarter.
You are actually working harder by working smarter.
You are working
That's
harder.
smart.
It's true, but it's more effective.
What else do you look for when you're assigning new talent? Like, how do you assess, besides, you mentioned a couple of things, how you assess their potential, but a lot of questions we got on the page were like, am I good enough for a manager? People have a lot of self-doubt. So what do you look for when you're assigning new talent?
When I first started this, I used to think that more followers equaled more income, and that is not true. Or more followers equaled more potential, not true. And it made sense that that's why I thought it, because like I had one client who had like 200,000 followers, and they made
Yeah.
more than a client with 15,000 followers, right? And
Right.
that's just kind of how it rolled. But I have been pleasantly surprised. There've actually been a couple of times when I've taken on somebody, with that I was kind of like, oh, I've got a spot, and it's better to fill it with somebody than to not fill it. So I'll
Yeah.
put this person in right now. Okay. It's actually happened twice. And then this person just blew me out of the water. And I was like,
Wow.
oh,
You're
was
making money.
incorrect. You're making money. I was incorrect in my assumptions. So it made me reevaluate and think about like, what is it that
Mm,
essentially, what is it that potential, because that's really what I look for, is the potential,
yeah.
for income and the potential for growth. What I look for, quality of content is huge.
Yeah,
Because you can upsell if your content is good,
absolutely.
instead of just
I love a
posting.
good upsell.
Yeah, everybody loves a good upsell, but it's like, let's not just post this on your feed, but also let's
Right.
have you be the face of a product launch because your stuff
Yeah.
is so good. I look for someone who's a hustler because what I want to have happen when I'm taking on a client is I want to take stuff off their plate so that they can run and they can run as
Right.
fast as they can.
You don't want them to nap.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want them to be like, oh, Lena took stuff off my plate, so now I
Night
can
night.
take a nap for 4 hours a day. I want them to take advantage of the time that, having a
Right.
manager gives them, and then I want them to work on
Yeah.
building their brand. And so what I really look for is I look for like it's a personality thing,
Mhm.
not just a personality thing, but a mindset, I guess would be a better way of putting it. Is this person really interested in investing in their brand? Are they
Yeah.
interested in growing their business? Are they interested in taking feedback too?
Right.
Because not that I'm like all knowing or anything like that, but I can see sometimes things that they can't see. And,
Absolutely.
and if I'm able to be like, hey, have you considered X, Y, and Z? I love it when people are excited about growth because I'm excited about growth. And so
Right.
I feel like when I find somebody that's aligned like that has that potential, they're making great content, they're working really hard and I can see it, then
Yeah.
like this is exciting and I want to be a part of it.
Right. I love that. Are there any other specific tips or advice that you would give to aspiring influencers who are considering working with a talent manager? Like maybe they're not there yet, or maybe they're not ready. What do they need to do?
I would say building your brand is very important. I actually think you posted about this the other day where you were talking about like before you go viral, it's important that you kind of have these foundational things in place.
Yes.
And I would say refer back to that post by Eddie. Maybe you can like link it here or something.
Thanks. I will. I will leave you here.
But yeah, where it's like before you go big, you've got to get your stuff in order and
Yeah,
you've
you
got
gotta
to
get your
know.
house built.
I would also say building relationships is important too. Whether you're ready to work with a manager yet or not, maybe you have an eye on, a management agency or something like that you're interested in getting in with, in the next year or two or something. And I would say, follow them on Instagram. Like and comment on their stuff,
Yeah.
engage with their content, reach out, start developing relationships, maybe hop on a phone call. You could even see if you could hop on a phone call with them and be like, I'd love to know what you're looking for
Right.
in an influencer that you want to manage. Another thing too is that sometimes I have people reach out and they want me to manage them, and it's not that I don't want to, it's just that I don't have a spot. And
Right.
so I would say if you know who you want to work with,
That's a
pester them.
good point. Like leave the spot for me when you open up. Call me.
Exactly. Like leave a spot for me and keep me top of mind. Brain space wise, can't take on more people because then I don't
Right.
do a good job. And so it's like, I don't have a spot for you right
Right.
now, but it's good to know that you're interested,
That's a good
but
point. How many influencers can one person manage, or how many people are on your roster that you would think is a good number if someone was looking around?
I guess I can't speak for every management situation because I don't know what
Yeah.
they all look
It
like.
depends on if they have like backup.
Some bigger agencies will have, it set up so that like one person does the outreach, one person does the contracts, one person does the
Right.
billing, and that's not me at this point. So personally for myself, I've discovered through trial and error that about 10 is my max.
Yeah.
Um, I'm a little bit happier at 9 because my brain doesn't feel like it's gonna fall out of my
Blow up.
head.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was like, "Ooh." But even more recently, I've been realizing like it's important for me as a manager to take a lot of time to think about the strategy for these people and to
Right.
build these like
It's a
lists.
full-time job.
Yeah, it's a full-time job, and
Yeah.
so you definitely don't want to get in with somebody that doesn't have time for you, even if they're an amazing manager, even if they're doing a really good job. Their ability to do a good job will go down as they're
The
overloaded.
roster goes up. Yeah.
Yes, and I've made that mistake because I was like, oh, more people, more money, more
Right.
bandwidth, this is great. But ultimately, it ended up being a mistake because I couldn't brain-wise do it all. Lesson learned.
There's
But
only so much room up there.
yeah, there really is. There's only
Yeah.
so much brain space. And it's funny because sometimes I'm like, well, I have more time in a given day, but it's not really about time. I mean, it is, but it's not because it's
Yeah.
about brain space.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I
You
wouldn't
need rest. Everyone needs rest.
everyone needs rest and everybody needs, if you think about it too from a manager's perspective, if you're managing all these people, you know, you think about how many times you text your manager and how many times you call them, like they're doing that for all of these other people too. And you think about what that looks like and the bandwidth of what that is.
Yeah.
And so like I've had some girls be like, how do you do this with more than me? You know, I feel like I have a full-time job, you know, or whatever.
Right.
And it's a lot of work. And I don't want to put like an arbitrary number on it and be like, don't go with a manager if they have more than 10 people, because maybe they're smarter than me.
No.
More brain space.
Yeah.
But I would definitely,
I think that they wouldn't be keeping up with all aspects of the campaign at that point also.
Right. And
I had, you know, when I worked with an agency, I had, you know, somebody on legal, somebody was on pitching, and then, you know, it was very spread out. There was an invoicing department. So, you know, that, like you said, that itself is this whole monster. And if someone could take off invoicing for you, obviously that opens up so you can manage more people. But if you're a one-woman show, then, and you have to do it all the way through from A to Z, then yeah, that would be overwhelming.
Yeah. And I would say if you're looking for a manager and you're, you know, kind of interviewing around and, you know, having these conversations, I would say asking, you know, what their bandwidth is and how many people they have is an excellent question to ask. And
how do influencers find managers? Like if someone was looking, how would they find you, for example? I know you said referrals, but if someone was just out of the blue.
Obviously there's bigger agencies, so you could Google influencer marketing agencies, you know, and look at that. But another thing that's a good indication of, you know, you can ask around, you can ask your friends, like who manages you. Sometimes people are gatekeeping.
I was about to say, do you think people are going to gatekeep you? I think so.
Sometimes I've had experiences where I've had, you know, clients be like, I'm not telling anyone about you, as if it's like a compliment. Like, I'm not telling anyone. I'm like, well, right. I appreciate that you love me so much, but also like,
please tell someone.
But also I run a business, and businesses thrive when people know about them. So like, don't be shy. You can tell people about them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that sometimes influencers gatekeep because, you know, it's an industry in which everybody's trying to, you know, get ahead. And if you feel like you've got something really working for you, you don't want to share that information with everybody. So I understand that. Oftentimes managers will reach out to people that they want to work with. It's not uncommon for, you know, agencies or managers to kind of hit up people's inboxes and be like, hey, I have an opening. Do you want to work with me? You can also, here's a tip, because this is what I do to see like who's got a manager and stuff. You can look at who people follow or who follows them. And so if you like find like an agency or whatever, you can look and see like, who do they follow and are they following them back?
Kind of like who's on the roster.
Yeah, you can kind of figure out who's on the roster.
And also in their bio, you know, if it says like reach out, email me, reach out to my manager, it have the manager's email right there.
And there you go, you found it. So yeah, you can kind of get a feel for what managers are out there. But it is an interesting thing, because I feel like at times I have been a little bit gate kept. I don't know how you say that.
You have been gate kept, yes.
I have been gate kept.
Yeah. It was a privilege to know your name when I knew it and got referred, because Peter was like, shh, don't tell anybody. I'm like, okay.
Secret.
Yes, it was. How are you different from other talent management companies? What makes you special? What makes you different? Why would an influencer choose to work with you over anybody else?
Something that I feel like sets me apart ultimately from other agencies and managers is that I feel like I am a hardcore hustler, and I'm always interested in growth and becoming better and improving myself. The way that I do things today is not the same way as I did them, you know, even a year ago or 6 months ago, because I learn new things and I'm always looking for ways to be better and ways to develop what I offer to my clients so that it's a better experience for them. I take a lot of feedback from my clients. I have a very open relationship with my clients where, you know, even the first phone call that you have with me is, what are you looking for? How can I fit that need? How can I be what you want in a manager? I also offer a much more tailored management experience because I am not a big agency. You know, there's not like these are the processes and procedures that must happen or whatever. It's like, no, I'm here to make your experience better. And like I said about always learning and growing, like I have pursued continued education throughout this whole process because it was important to me to become the best version of myself in this industry. I got my master's degree while working full time.
That's so crazy.
I know. That was exhausting, but it was good.
I can't believe you did that.
No, I feel like because I'm also smaller, I feel like my rates are a lot more competitive than other big agencies. And so if you're looking for someone that's not going to take an arm and a leg out of your cut, like That's
Yeah.
sweet. I think most agencies charge like 20% and I charge like 15, and then I have like a management fee.
It's worth it. Steady income for you, guaranteed income for you, but also better for the influencer.
Right, for sure. I think that it makes it a lot more approachable as well. You know, if you're like nervous about letting someone take a cut of your paycheck, like 15% is a lot less intimidating and daunting than like a solid 20%. So
And there are 20% managers that only manage your inbox, meaning inbound deals. So that is a very good competitive rate. But if you ever, when you're growing, I'm just going to put a cap on this. This interview was 2023. So if anything changes, it's because Alina blew up. Okay.
did I tell you? I don't remember if I told you, but I do have an employee now. Did I tell you that?
I don't think so.
No, I have an employee. So kind of exciting.
Awesome. Congratulations. Your
Fun
first
time.
step of many. Where can everyone find you if they want to learn more, reach out to you, follow you?
I'm on Instagram, and it's Alina J LLC on Instagram. We're working on building a website, so we'll have that eventually. I know. Woo!
That's so
But yeah,
exciting.
you can always email me too. It's alina@alinajllc.com.
Well, I enjoyed talking to you so much. I'm really excited to share this with our Influencer Fast community and everyone in the influencer and content creator space. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.